The Entrepreneurship in Art episode that you're about to watch is unedited and uncut. Listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your preferred podcast platform for the edited version. Enjoy.
I'm sure you both felt, as I did, both last night and certainly this morning, thinking about whether or not to even do this podcast today after the events and the ongoing riots and demonstrations. For me, I'm glad that we didn't kind of email or text back and forth and say, well, and debate it. We all just showed up and showed up without any answers, and we're all white people of privilege. Dan and I, as people who identify as males, even more privileged than Carly. We walk through the world much easier than anybody else. But I think that if this podcast and the writing is entrepreneurship and art, you can't stop. The Buddha was a warrior before he became Buddha. He was in the warrior caste, and so I mean one way people look at the Buddha, I think the way he identified himself was an awakened warrior. And if you think about the challenges and the racism that continues to go on in caste systems there, I mean, being an awakened warrior there, and then there have been people who've talked about other awakened warriors and bodhisattvas, right? So a bodhisattva is someone who's on their way to becoming a Buddha, and Muhammad Ali was a bodhisattva. MLK was a bodhisattva. Sojourner Truth was a bodhisattva. I think that that awakened warrior, Killer Mike, I think, is a bodhisattva, right? I mean, from Run the Jewels. So it's action that you have to act in these times, and action can be action. In my opinion, should be nonviolent, right? And that's really the challenge. That's the heartbreaking part of this. And Martin Luther King, who said that the riots are the language of those without a voice, all through the civil rights time. I mean, he was very, very consistent on nonviolence. Even Malcolm X. I mean, as a I would argue bodhisattva as somebody who went from a very, very, very violent kind of approach to a peaceful one. That is where it has to go. It's heartbreaking to say that, because you can talk about MLK's lack of violence and all that he did, and then they shot him. So it's but I think we have to show up, and so I'm glad we've shown up, and maybe this will be a appropriately different type of podcast than one in which we're kind of laughing and joking through. But it's you have to show up, and your KPI of consistency. You show up when it's times when things make sense and when times don't make sense.
So I'd like to interject, though. I think the question of whether to show up or not is actually a good one. I don't think that you always have to show up. I think that there is a lot of very deserved kind of emotional fatigue that goes hand in hand with these times. I saw, funnily enough, it was a tweet saying, like, turn off your automated marketing tweets and emails. Like, no one wants to hear the like Motivation Monday shit right now. Like, it's not the right time for a lot of content. So I don't think that showing up by default is the right thing. I think that there's complicity in, can't say that word right now, in silence. And so I think it's necessary to acknowledge what's happening. But I also think if you're not thinking about it or talking about it, I mean, it's clear which side you're on. But I don't know. I mean, I like that we all showed up today too, but yesterday and today haven't been my worst days. I had a really hard time. I don't know when it was, it would be on Wednesday. And I just like sobbed throughout the day. And had we had this scheduled on Wednesday, I probably wouldn't have shown up, to be honest. I don't think I would have been able to comment or talk or think about much else that particular day. And Dan, I feel like I see some heaviness on your face, and maybe today is not that day for you either. How are you doing?
I mean, relative to what a lot of people are experiencing, I'm pretty good, right? As George said, as a white male, it's it's tough to feel like I have any issues. I don't know. I was thinking, it's weird being. I'm in Pennsylvania right now, still with my parents, and planning the trip back to Brooklyn. But in Brooklyn, I live in a very large apartment building that is very mixed. There are lots of African American families. There are young white people like myself. It's this, and there's only 2 elevators and like 18 floors, so you run into everybody. So I've been thinking a lot about those people that are my neighbors, right? And there are some like multi-generational families in that building where the grandparents live in one apartment and their kids with their own children live, a couple floors down. It's just it's a lot to think about and to not know how to act.
Right.
My girlfriend teaches at a school in Brooklyn, so the majority of her kids are African American or Latino or whatever, and so she's dealing with a lot of it too, of 13-year-olds that don't know how to respond to this. So it's very I don't even know what the right word is. It feels wrong to say uncomfortable, but there's
Hard.
it's hard. Yeah. I mean, it's such a big issue that has been going on for years. And it's just like, well, what do you do aside from talk about it and donate to the right places? Because the response I see when people talk about like the rioting and the protests is, well, that's not going to lead to anything. There needs to be more organized movement. But there has been organized movements around this for decades now, and it's stuff like this still happens. So I guess it's just frustrating that you think or you hope that there's progress happening, and then stuff like this happens. So I don't know. I don't have the right way to articulate it, nor do I, or even the right way to think about it. But I'm definitely thinking about all the people I know that are struggling through this in ways that I am not.
But I think, I really identify with that feeling. I've been feeling like the weight of my privilege this week. I don't think that it means that you're exempt from not feeling. I mean, the fact that you're feeling for these people is the appropriate response, even if you are not the one who is suffering these kind of just human right violations daily. I think that it's what you said though about like, donating to the right places. I think it's difficult. None of us can really say the right things because we're not the voices that should be listened to right now. I think right now the best thing that you can do is help in really material ways, like donate to bail funds. I know that Minnesota Freedom Fund is getting a lot of attention right now because that's, kind of the epicenter of this. But now with the protests happening all across the US, there's going to be a lot of more localized bail funds that need support. I think now is the time to read the work of Black authors, American or otherwise. I think there are certain there are things that you can do. You can support African American businesses in these times, you know, like there are some things where, and unfortunately often it is like putting your money behind these people. But I'm not, I don't know why I said unfortunately. I mean that there's value in that, of course.
Yeah, and
But
that's been the most direct way I've felt comfortable contributing, because I think for all of us, it's should our voice. I don't feel appropriate with my voice being the one out there. You know, it's should be we should be the voices of supporters and allies rather than I don't know. I guess I don't know the right way to talk about it. But I think the other thing that should be discussed is, you know, with elections coming up and any local elections, who are the right people to be voting in that really have the best interests of everyone in mind? Who should we be focused on keeping out of office? Because that's the long-term strategy.
right.
I have to imagine that's how this actually changes.
And it's really scary because one of the kind of long-term effects of Trump's presidency is going to be all of the people he's put in like the Supreme Court and all of these judges now. But I don't know if you guys follow Cardi B on social media. Did you guys see her tweet about this or her kind of message? And I think it's really cool because she's always really vocal in times like this, and people constantly dismiss her because of the way that she looks or what she raps about. I find her to be such a clear thinker with a lot of this, and she put up something this week and she was saying exactly that. Like, she talked about how she's scared of what's happening and she doesn't want anyone to get hurt, but she was like, we have to vote, and you don't. And I think the problem with when you tell people to vote, their first association with that is the president or, you know, like the person who runs the country. But she was like, you can vote in your mayors, you can vote in, like, you know, you can start at that level. And I think that truly is the only way that you can have real change is by using your voice to elect people. I think locally is the most important place to start because those people are so much more accessible to you than the president. If you have a mayor that you're happy with or a governor that you're happy with, like you can spread it that way. But anyways, I wanted to mention Cardi B because I think, yeah, even though people give her such a hard time, like why would she have political commentary? Why wouldn't she? And she doesn't get deterred by that kind of response. And I think so often what she's saying is the exact message. And in this case right now, as you also said, Dan, it's really elections or what people should be thinking about how to really change this.
You know, and it's what Killer Mike said too. I mean, I've watched his speech 10 times and actually wrote some parts down, and it's very consistent with that. You know, he said Atlanta is not perfect, but we're better than we ever were. Some of the reasons why Atlanta is better than it ever has been because of protests and because of the, I mean, so you can say that these types of protests don't have any bearing, but there's a pretty clear connection between protests and rights to women's vote, gay marriage. So protests do matter. You know, he said, and this goes to your point also, Carly, about like, you know, just I forget how you put it, but turning off the ads or whatever. He said about CNN, he said, karma is a mother. Stop feeding the fear and anger. Give people hope. I mean, I had to say to my 13-year-old, 14 tomorrow, that, you know, the mind stream is tricky, and what you put into it is you know, you have to be very careful what you put into it. And so there's a apathy is not the same as withdrawal and disgust, right? As Richard Linklater said. And you know, so there are times where it's you can't beat ourselves up. We can't, you know, we have to be, it's all about compassion. It's always about compassion. But to both your points, you know, again, to use Killer Mike's words, because as I think we're all kind of saying, we don't have standing to use our own words in this. We just don't.
Mm-hmm.
But so whether it's the words of Cardi B or MLK or Killer Mike, I think those are. But he says, fortify your own house so that you may be a house of refuge, and organize. He says, now is the time to plot, to plan, to strategize, to organize. It's time to beat up prosecutors and mayor's office and police chiefs by voting, right? And that's where we're all kind of coming down. And yeah, I mean, it's the you can look at the systemic racism. You can point to, a utilitarian would say the way that you get rid of this is that you force police officers to buy insurance against claims for when they are convicted of violence. In other words, so I'm a police officer, I get convicted of some violent act, what have you. I, police officer, have to pay for that, not police officer union. So I have to take an insurance policy. And because this monster that killed George Floyd, he'd been disciplined so many times, and the union and others just they turn an eye, right, a blind eye. I'm not saying that's the right way. I'm not a libertarian at all. I think that we as a society have to figure this out. And I think it comes, just as Carly, you're saying, and Dan saying, that it's through voting, and it's voting at the local level, and voting at the police chiefs, etc. Our sheriffs are voted in. They're not, they're not. You're right, Carly. I mean, Trump's legacy will be that amongst other horrific acts is that he has appointed lifetime judges, throughout. That's like, if you really pry away all of this, that's the architectural kind of foundation that they're trying to do, that they're just going to secure for as long as they can a specific ideology through the appointment of lifetime judges, but not all officials are appointed for lifetime.
Yeah.
But it's interesting also that I'm sorry to interrupt, I'll shut up, but it's interesting that we're all in our own ways quoting, artists as people, you bring up Cardi B, I'm talking about Killer Mike, as people that are able to help us see through this. And I really think that that's important. And again, that's why, I hear you and I agree with you, Carly. There are times where we're not showing up. Showing up is probably the wrong phrase. I just meant being mindful, and that mindfulness can be in any, can result in not showing up too. But it's our job, as my job as an educator, is to try to instill mindfulness in my students, not to give them answers. Like I always say that my best classes are ones where they leave with more questions than answers, right? And it's about trying, because there aren't answers, right? But we can try to filter conversations and foster conversations.
I think there are a lot of answers. It's that things have to be dismantled and rebuilt. I think there's a lot of really clear
that's an
solutions.
Rebuilt to what? Rebuilt to what? I mean,
burn
it all down.
Well, the policing just system in America is there's so much deeply embedded systemic racism in that entire culture.
And I just provided an answer, quote unquote. Get rid of the unions.
Perhaps, yeah.
Force, but so what is the answer if not that?
Well, I mean, there are answers here. I mean, it's not easy to maybe put them in place, but it's clear that there are just too many racists in positions of power.
You're just restating the question, and so then the answer would be voting them out of power.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think that the policing structure in America just needs to be literally maybe burnt to the ground and dismantled and rebuilt. But I wanted to say something else about the showing up thing, because I don't I don't think that showing up either is like a bad thing. I think one of the more powerful examples of videos that I've seen are white people literally barricading Black people from police and standing in front of them. And there are times where showing up is absolutely, I mean, you have to show up. It's about, you know, showing up to talk about, you know, or sharing your like automated marketing tweet, that kind of thing. Sure, turn it off. But showing up, I don't think is ever something that you shouldn't do. But to your point about artist art, I totally agree. Like one of the most powerful things that I've seen this week, and I'm afraid that I won't be able to say his name properly, but Keating Bryant, this 12-year-old gospel singer from Florida. I saw it originally on Tracy Ellis Ross's Instagram, but it's a short song, I Just Want to Live, and it's so incredibly powerful. I mean, his voice is beautiful, but he's just saying like, I just want to live. And it breaks my heart to think that a 12-year-old boy has to have those kind of thoughts and has to like wrestle with that at 12. But it's something, whether it's artists talking about it or artists making art about it, that particular video, song, whatever you want to call it, clip, has been one of the most impactful things that I've seen this week. And I've found myself just going back and listening to it because it's like there's the emotion that he expresses in that somehow is something that I can identify with none of what he's saying, but the level of emotion that he is portraying in that song, it's like that's what it's about. I mean, also Jamie Foxx had a pretty inspiring speech as well. There was that interaction with Denzel Washington and that homeless guy. I mean, there are people in positions of power that have bigger platforms that should use it, but of course, and it's good that they are. Then there's also instances of, you know, like a 12-year-old gospel singer having such a profound effect on so many people. I'll definitely share that video. Have you guys seen it?
Yeah.
No.
So maybe here's what we should do. So let's there are some good arts and business stuff to talk about. What I think we should do is let's record a separate intro to this podcast. Let's spend the next few days finding maybe the right voices that should be heard during all of this, and we can record an intro that pushes people to those different whether podcasts or social media accounts or blogs or whatever, people that can talk about this better than we can. I think maybe that's one of the best things we can do is direct people to the right places.
Yeah, I agree.
Yep, definitely.
Cool. Well, on that note, let's talk about some of the art and business in the world and what's going on. George, you want to talk about the piece you did?
Yeah, I mean, I've got a couple. And they come together in a sort of strange way. But I was really happy to be able to write a Forbes piece about an actual blockchain-based product in the music business. As you know, you all know, I've been writing and evangelizing about the possibilities of blockchain to help artists create sustainable careers since 2015 or so early days. And there's like most technologies, it came out with this initial kind of thrust of excitement, and then a lot of just not much to show for it. And then in certain areas outside of the music business world, you've seen adoption of blockchain, but in the music business, there hasn't been nearly the adoption for a lot of reasons I won't get into here. There's tons of writing on it. But an old friend of mine and colleague, a guy named Bruno, started a company in the early days of blockchain time called Revelator, and like all businesses, kind of had to push and twist and turn and I don't like using the word pivot, but kind of change and make adjustments. But he's one of the reasons why I think Bruno's been successful is because he's a music first person. He ran a label called Quango. He understands the challenges of the music business generally, and he's a technologist. In any case, he ended up putting a partnership together with Tiotso, which is the Finnish kind of version of ASCAP. So they pay artists public performance royalties when their music is played on TV or radio. And typically, from the time that a song is played on radio or TV or what have you, to the time that that money finds its way to the artist's pockets, it can literally take years. It's a really, I'll use the word clunky system. The program that they built, that Revelator built with Tiotso, is it takes 2 hours. So from the time that the song is played to it showing up in the wallet, a crypto-based wallet of the artist, takes 2 hours. That's game changing. That's something that's foundation changing, and it ties in with the other piece that I wrote, which was an interview with Zoë Keating, the cellist and true kind of independent musician. And it's I don't think I'll talk about it too much on this podcast, maybe on a different one, because there's a lot to unpack in it. But one of the things that she says through the interview is, she's so grateful to have some money coming in right now from her public performance royalties because of a TV show that she did music for that aired like a year ago. It's taken a literal year for that money to show up. That's been to her benefit right now because her touring money has dried up, but it speaks directly to, that's an unacceptable lag. And it's an institutional lag, right? I mean, there's no technological reason, as what Bruno has shown, for it to take that long for money to show up. Institutions have decided that, we'll hold on to the money, right? I mean, so what are they doing with that money for that unconscionably long amount of time? Well, they're earning interest on it. I mean, it's essentially a Ponzi scheme, right there. But so there's a connection to those two pieces, and I like it because it does show a technical solution through blockchain that could address one of the most DIY, in the best sense of that word, artists out there, and the bridge where the technology can have an impact on an artist. And so the two pieces were unrelated, but as I want to do, I sort of crushed them together in my brain. But I think there's a through line to them. But it's been a satisfying week of writing, and Zoe has a lot of other really interesting ideas about how she's going to maintain kind of her career going forward. Unsurprisingly, when she broke down her income, most of it was touring and the pie chart, and then some of it was licensing revenue. Her smallest slivers were Spotify and DSPs and Bandcamp, and she said, and I asked her, I said, you're one of the few artists that actually will put your royalties up there online, your income from. I said, why do you do that? And she said, well, I'm an information architect. I need data. And as Spotify was starting to emerge, you kept hearing, well, this is going to be great for artists. This is going to really help them be able to build a career. And but I want to see that. And the artists that I'm talking to, that's not the case. So, when you're talking about the money coming in from DSPs being 10% of your total revenue stream, that ain't enough. And so she just said, we have to put the information out there in a clear way so that people then can address it. And she referenced COVID. We have to, the fact that we couldn't get data on how many actual cases there were meant that we couldn't address it. And Dan, you've used the line, I've used it too, if you can't measure it, it doesn't exist. And again, I know we're kind of segueing all over the place, but it's true of racism. It's true of all of these things. If we don't measure these things and address them with real kind of data instead of anecdotal stuff, we can't ever fix the problems. So she's way more articulate than I, but the through line of it, it's all this look, you've got to confront the truth, but not lose faith. And I think that's true of what this country is going through on so many levels. It's true of what artists is going through. Technology to some degree can help that, but it has to be technology that's led with humanity. So that's what I wrote about.
I think, and you said you don't really want to speak about it, so I won't spend too much time. But one thing that I think Zoe did really eloquently is talk about the entire ecosystem, like her individual ecosystem as it relates to the entire music ecosystem. And I think that also is something, I mean, of course, she's talking about the current situation, which is the effects of COVID-19, but she's thinking, you know, okay, I might be fine. I have these royalties delayed as they may be. I have them coming. My sound guy doesn't. My booking agent doesn't. And that's something that I also think is not really being talked about as much, just in general with COVID-19. I mean, like we hear so much about the airlines needing bailout, but it's like bailout. Sorry, I'm having a hard time with basic English. You know, it's like, sure, travel may change, but it's the ticketing agents, it's the people that run kiosks in the airport, it's the taxi drivers who are no longer taking people there. And I think reframing these things, whether it's about artist payments or systemic racism or a global pandemic, you have to look at the ecosystem. You can't have a really individualized view of things. And I just think that was one part with her where it was really, she was speaking about something specific, but it's just so transferable to so many areas of life. And I think, yeah, just like a healthy ecosystem is really what we need to be better at.
That's right. And you know, thank you for bringing that up, because it was also the same thing when I did doing these series of talking to actual artists that are, you know, trying to figure it out. The through line that's starting to emerge is just, as you say, Carly, Joe Pug, the piece that I wrote a week or so ago, he said, you know, I'll probably be okay, but I'm worried, just as you say, my ecosystem. What about the guys on my band? Zoe said, you know, my sound man doesn't get the royalty check, right? She said that her sister, who was working managing a venue or something, she got let go and she had to find a job in another industry. We keep talking about how you know, we come out the other side of this. There very well could be less art. And to your point about bailouts, yeah, that, and I say this in the interview in the piece, it's a societal choice. What do we as a society want to support? And I said it to her, we get the society we deserve, right? And so we're seeing that. We are seeing exactly what happens when a society decides to absolutely prioritize unfettered capitalism at all costs. It is absolutely predictable, right? We keep hearing about kind of black swan moments or something. COVID-19 was not a black swan moment. It was not only predictable, it was predicted, right? There was actual documentation. We as a society, this administration decided to ignore that, right? These issues with systemic racism is entirely predictable. You cannot create and foment such a country of discontent and not expect this. You know, if the music industry, you know, it ends up being a third of what it was, and I'm talking about the real music industry, all of those people, the sound people, the people that run house, the independent venues out there. If that goes away, that's entirely predictable, because we have, as a society, decided, no, we are going to commoditize all of these things. We're going to Live Nation ourselves and homogenize our way right into something. So it's we have to decide, and that's why I said at the beginning of this podcast, it feels like reckoning, you know, and reckoning is a ever evolving thing. What did you both write about?
There you go, Carly.
Well, the pressure that was put on worked, and I did actually get the personas follow-up that I mentioned, that Dan and I both spoke to last week. So I have created 5 personas for entrepreneurship and art.
Wow.
Created the psychographic profile for each of those, and wrote it in a way where I kind of like templated it out. Can you put the like smart filter on everything I'm saying when you edit this, please, Dan?
Yeah, I think that's an EQ setting. Let me
Oh my, yeah,
post.
it's like, that would be great. But so I tried to make it as easy to replicate as possible. So I say, okay, this is kind of the things that you can look at, the questions that you can answer. Then I throw a huge kind of bullet list and then tidy it up into the first persona and then introduce the next 5. And and then the next step will be kind of, as we were talking about last week, just really testing it and using ourselves as a guinea pig and just like offering some transparency into what it looks like to set up a campaign, the results that can come from those campaigns, but just trying to make it as replicable for other people to do this as well. So instead of a more high level piece. So I have put that together. So the pressure and the public shaming worked.
Well,
I was held accountable.
That's
no,
right. I prefer that.
Yes, I'm totally joking. I was the only one that put those words on it. I was held accountable, and I'm happy. And it's like the first step of, I think, what will be 3 in this follow up. But yeah, I think this is the kind of content that I personally am really excited to produce for Entrepreneurship and Art. Like really just helping people do it in a tactical way where there's no like behind a paywall or secret that's like, I don't know, you can do it this way and this is literally how we're going to do it, and we'll show you how it works along the way. And I was thinking about it too, because I had this moment where I was like, what if none of these personas are actually right? Or like, what if the campaigns produce really bad results? And it's like, but that's real life. So
I'm
here
so
we go.
comfortable with that. I'm so comfortable
me too.
with us running our first ads and being disappointed with the results, because then we get to talk about the iteration process, because that's always how it is. There's never you do it perfect right the first time. That's, well, in a consulting or agency capacity, yeah, the client will be happy if everything worked right the first time, but you wouldn't get any learnings out of it. You wouldn't anything that would inform future campaigns.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And
it can be
we've
bad
been lucky
luck.
before, but yeah.
Yes, we have. But well, I mean, it's informed luck, right? I mean, it's a swag, a sophisticated wild ass guess, and sometimes you can hit it, and then you can refine it. But I did, as you were saying, Carly, like, so our podcast is Entrepreneurship and Art, and you're saying you kept the word shamed, right? Which I don't that's not true, right? It's
no, I know.
But so E&A could also stand for encouragement and accountability. And that's really what I want this podcast to be: encouragement and accountability, not just for the 3 of us, but for anyone who's listening. We all need encouragement and accountability in equal measures, right? Like it's not enough just to, did you do your thing, right? It's how can I help? How can I help you do that thing? One of my favorite classes that I teach is called the Innovator's DNA. And I just let the students do whatever they want. You're supposed to spend X number of hours outside of the classroom doing stuff. And, at Berkeley, I'm sure some students do that, like if for their instrument. Like if you're a guitar person, I'm sure you're running scales for a couple hours per every time that you meet in class. I don't think in the business classes people are doing that. So I try to give them, I said, look, take 2 hours a week and just explore whatever. I used to call it tickles your brain. I think I may change it to go down whatever rabbit hole you want, and then report back.
I thought you were going to use a German word for a second, instead of tickle your brain.
Schadenfreude your brain. And then we come and we meet in class, and I just try to be like, okay, so let me encourage you, talk about what you want, and then you're accountable. You have to do something. It could be a little something. Oh, I looked at, origami. And then my job is to be like, awesome. Let's go deeper into origami or whatever. Right. And that encouragement and accountability is something that I don't think there's enough out there in the world. And absent that accountability, you do get to the Parkinson's law thing where it's like, I don't really have it fully formed, so I'll just kind of keep not doing it, right? Stuff has to get done. You know, it's amazing when you kind of put that deadline on yourself, and you get done, and that frees up your mind, and then you can do more, you can build on it, and a sophisticated wild ass guess becomes less of a guess, right? And over time it just becomes more sophisticated and less wild ass.
Going back to
ENA's
Parkinson's law,
entrepreneurship and art. Go ahead.
Well, going back to Parkinson's law, I've noticed that when you set a deadline, I mean, not only does it help it get done, it helps you achieve that flow state that we keep on talking about. I'm way more likely to lose 3 hours of just dialed in working if I know it's got to get done. I'm much more susceptible to distraction if it's not a deadline. I guess it's the other way to phrase it.
That's
Totally.
so interesting. I've never really thought of it in those terms. But we all, I think, as humans, and do this, like, oh, I'm best at, like, in that moment where, like, I know I've got to go give this speech or this talk, and then there's 20 minutes leading up to it. Like, that's what, like, yeah, but that's because you're being forced into that flow state. If you can actually do that discipline on your own and give yourself the deadlines, you can have that kind of productivity that's also justified as a justification for procrastination. A lot of people will say, well, no, I work best when I'm right up against that deadline. No, you don't. You think you do, but you don't. What you're doing, just as you say, Dan, is you're forcing yourself into that flow state. If you can make that more of a habit, you can get there without the stress.
Well, by giving yourself the deadline. I think that the self-imposed deadline is the important part. But it's I think you talked about last week, George. Creativity is this combination of this is amazing, this feels great. It's kind of the trope despair, right? It feels amazing, and then always with creativity, you hit some type of roadblock, whether that's creatively or emotionally or physically. It is the having that deadline, self-imposed or not, that forces you to get through the roadblocks, which kind of sustains that flow state, because there's no, oh, this is hard, I need to take a break. It's no, I need to dial in and figure this out.
And it's that dialing in moment, that moment I experience it constantly when I'm writing, when I'm teaching, where it's like I can't type another word. I can't, and I force myself through it. And frequently it's the wrong word, but just in that typing it out, then I go back. And like when I'm teaching, I'll much to my students, dismay, I'm sure, like I will just kind of like, oh, I'm gonna power through, and I'll say a lot of nonsense, but in the act of that, it's like, there it was, and it's like we're talking about one of the podcasts, my insane scrawling on the board. It's like I'm gonna power through this thing, and yes, there will be a lot of nonsense, but somewhere in there is that little kind of kernel. But if I don't power through it, if I don't go through that, then it's too easy to just go, yeah, I can't figure this out. It's the discipline, the habit. But once you know that, once you understand that there's a rhythm to it, then it makes a lot more sense. It's not random.
Well, yeah, and that's huge. I think once you realize that you can kind of trigger these, you can trigger flow state, you can trigger the inspiration and motivation that comes from actually producing art, which I talked about before, rather than being motivated to create art, it's creating art and then being motivated. I think you're right. That's where you're nearly manipulating yourself in a positive way. It's you understand what the right triggers are, and then you can keep on doing that.
Yeah. And some of that is the accountability, like having other people that are relying on you, other people, we are, as Carly points out, we are, are all living in our little micro economies of incentives, and those can be self-imposed incentives or external incentives, but you do need them, but you also need that encouragement. Like you want, you want someone to say, wow, that's cool. Like, I mean, and that's not an ego-driven thing. It's just all artists, all people want that moment of feeling heard, feeling like their voices are being listened to. You moderated a panel. How'd that go?
I was trying to think if I've ever moderated a panel before. I mean, I've done stuff when I was a student at Berkeley. I was thinking of one memory I had when I was a senior at Berkeley, and I put together some panel on, I don't know, just about independent artists and what they can do to get started. and I asked you to moderate it, George. You moderated it, and I think Jace Varden from Pledge Music and Michael Kramer.
Yeah.
He was
Michael, sure.
booking agent. Yeah. And I was the kind of host. I ran the music business club, and we were hosting it.
I have no recollection of this, by the way.
This was and also this was the dawn of Periscope, because I remember you had Periscope on your phone and you were live streaming it. But you said
sounds like something I would do. Yes.
Yeah, you were moderating it, and you're like, Dan, you're the host. Do you want to say a few words before we get started? And you gave me the mic, and I looked around and I said, well, looks like we're all here. Let's do it, and gave it back to you. And you're like, that is the least inspirational. Like, you need to go home and practice hosting events. I was like, I don't know what to do. That's why I asked you to moderate.
I'm such an asshole. I'm sorry.
It's so funny because it just prepping to moderate this panel made me think of that when I was like, all right, the seats are filled. Here you go, George.
Yeah. Well, you can't. I mean, you gotta.
No, you were absolutely right. But it was But anyway, so this panel, which I'm sure involved a nudge from George.
Just to qualify, I know I don't remember any of that, but I'm sure that you mistook, or if you took it as anything other than said with encouragement and respect and love, you took it the wrong way.
No,
but I think this is me in a nutshell, like where I was probably, it's that line from Lebowski. It's like, you're not wrong, dude, you're just an asshole. Like, I wasn't wrong in saying that you should but there are different and better ways to say it. But in my heart, I'm not trying to make people feel bad, but so
I don't remember taking it offensively at all, although I do think that's why our relationship works so well, because I'm like, that's how George phrases things. That's like, I'm very comfortable with the bluntness. I find that helpful. Well, also, we're going on a tangent now, but I was thinking this relates to moderating the panel, which I'll explain in a second. But the response from people that watched it and people involved were like, "Dan, that was a great job." Whatever. I found myself missing when I write an article and send it to both of you, and I get all the comments and highlights of, oh, you should change this, or this doesn't sound quite right, or have you thought about this? And even though that, I won't say stings, but it's like, oh, it wasn't perfect. I now actively miss that when I don't get someone critiquing, saying, oh, you could do better, because it's
that's the encouragement.
Yeah, that's the encouragement.
And sometimes, and I wrestle with this so much because I know I'm tall, I've got a deep voice, and I don't have the gene in me that like consciously wants to ever make anyone feel badly about themselves. But I know that it's always encouragement. Sometimes it's very blunt encouragament, but
tough love sometimes.
But it is love. It's never
exactly.
It's never an ad hominem attack. And I've ripped into associates and I try not to rip into students, but I've been very blunt with students. It comes from a place of, you can do better than that because I believe in you. Mm-hmm. That's where it comes from. Not, so it's something, but as a human, I'm trying to evolve, and I wish I could start with, I believe in you, I love you, I think you can do better than this, here's how. But sometimes it's just like, oh, you're not trying.
Maybe, but yeah, selfishly, it's I don't know. I've found it a really great form of encouragement, or just growth, criticism. It's a really productive form of criticism for me to hear this is what you're missing, or this is where you missed a step or screwed up or whatever.
But it can also just be ideas. It's not even like, oh, you screwed up or you're missing this or come off hard. I mean, I totally relate with what you're saying. A lot of people hate being edited. They hate like opening up a Google Doc and seeing a bunch of comments. But I'm the same way. If there's almost nothing, I feel almost like bad. Like, okay, well, there has to be because everyone is going to read it or look through it in their own lens. And so they'll maybe have different ideas. And so I completely can relate to that. Like, I don't think sad is the right word, but in a sense, it's like, oh, but I would have loved maybe, a new perspective or take on this, or had been maybe pushed in a direction that I wasn't thinking of. So I totally relate to that.
Me too. That's the collaborative thing. I mean, my favorite thing in the world is when I get feedback that makes me think or look at something differently than I have in my head. Those moments, and I tell you, as someone that's got a couple of years on both of you, they that's a mindset, and they get rarer and rarer. We've talked about this a lot in the podcast of concretizing thoughts of like, no, I know, no, you don't, and as you get older, you concretize thoughts, and to a certain degree that's good. You're able to go, no, this works with, but to a certain point, like, it's one of the reasons I keep teaching, it's one of the reasons I try to keep young people in my life is I want my sanity, my reality, my opinions checked with frequency, because I know I can get dogmatic, and dogmatism is the enemy of creativity.
It's one of the reasons why I love the three of us when we have our off-camera conversations, and I love the disagreements that we have, because those are some of the most I don't know, so much comes out of those disagreements. It really helps me. I like arguing with people that I respect, because it makes me question myself. It's like, do I have the right point here? I'm a lot less I feel a lot less stubborn when I'm disagreeing with people like you, because it forces me to put myself in check, and it's
and back at you both, right? I mean, like I love the pushback. I love the George, no, and because again, as you get older, you get more successful, you have less people pushing back at you, and that's dangerous. Now, I don't want some jackass pushing back at me. I will put, but people with whom I respect, people whom I value that different that different vector, that different, just like a tweak on the margin, like it. And this is true of society generally right now. Like there's something known as the rebound effect, where like if you're really kind of strident in your opinion and somebody puts information that completely contradicts it, all it does is make you redouble your initial thesis, right? And we're seeing that constantly, right? You've got to be able to go, okay, I'm not going to just double down here. I'm going to listen, right? That's what's missing. People aren't listening enough.
Anyway, to the topic of the panel. So it was some of the Recording Academy and Berkeley Institute of Creative Entrepreneurship put together. It was a panel on live streaming and how different artists are generating revenue from doing that. And this is something we've talked about before. George, you had a pretty good tweet about it, of begging artists not to put all of their art out for free, especially during this time. So it was an interesting, granted, it was, as I said, the first panel I've moderated, but it felt especially unique, because aside from it being remote, I had 15 minutes with these two people, then 8 minutes with this one person, then 15 minutes with these other two people. So that had its own set of challenges. But the first two people, it was Pat Shaw and Matt Heafy. Pat Shaw is the head of music strategy at Twitch, and Matt Heafy is the lead singer of Trivium. It's a metal band I've been a fan of for a while. So that was really cool. And Matt is a great example of non-skeuomorphic live streaming. This guy's he's been doing it for 2.5 years, for 5 days a week, 7 days a week when he's not on tour. He's doing it 3 times a day right now. So he will do the performing live, and he's got 3 camera angles. He's got a great audio setup. He's got camera angles so you can see his face, you can see his picking hand, and you can see his fretting hand when he's playing.
That's cool.
So that's cool. But he also does audio production. He'll do some gaming. He'll just do chats. He'll watch YouTube videos. So it really feels it's collisions, but it's also, it's something that you couldn't do anywhere else. It's something that you could only do live streaming, and he goes between them. It's not like one stream is just video games, one stream is just him playing. It's variety show. It sounds too cheesy, but there's different things going on within one stream, and you get a full picture of, I guess, him as a person, as a multifaceted person with different hobbies. But there's no other venue I can think of where you could watch someone. He'll have fans that are subscribed pick a cover for him to learn, and he'll play that, and then he'll do audio production, and he's in Logic or Pro Tools showing how he's tuning vocals, and then he'll play some video game, and the whole time the fans are interacting with him, and he does a great job of reading and responding to comments. And he talked about how, because he's been doing it for so long, he actually knows some of the people. He's met them at shows. He knows them by the screen name. They've come out and met with him. They're big supporters. And because of this, it's allowed him and his wife, and they have at least one kid, where they're able to work from home and still keep things going. And it's really important. So that was great to hear. And he would be a candidate for your musicians making it work.
Send them my way.
Yeah.
I love, and again, that's these byproducts of these pieces that are starting to come through is, you see this thread, both Zoe and Joe have both said the same thing in different ways, which is, I like those moments where it's sort of the Wild West and no one's yet figured out live stream, not Metallica or not the person that just picked up their guitar 10 days ago. We're all trying to figure it out, just like we were all trying to figure out the early internet. And so there is this time where we can invent and reinvent, and we all have kind of the same tools. And in a time when everybody has access to the same tools, she who uses them most creatively wins, right?
Yeah.
And that tends not to happen at the institutional and incumbent level. And so that's the exciting part of this.
Yeah, it seemed like he was going in the right direction. And when he started on Twitch, he was just gaming. He wasn't doing any stuff until someone at Twitch asked him, like, "Hey,
as everyone was, right?" Yeah.
Well, yeah. So at Twitch said, "Hey, would you play music?" And he's like, "No one wants to watch me play songs by myself." But it's very cool, the kind of format that he's developed. But there was also Stephen White, the head of Stage It, and Rhett Miller from the old 97s.
Old 97s, yeah.
And I've been a fan of Rhett Miller for a while. So this
decades.
Whole time,
I mean, old 97s were like the late 90s, early 2000s. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I've barely listened to the old 97s. I know Rhett Miller mostly from his solo stuff. And so this whole time I was just playing it cool because it was by chance a bunch of artists that I was fans of. But Rhett was interesting because it sounds like initially he was against the idea of live streaming, but he started doing it right when his tours were getting canceled. And now he does 4 shows a week. And he said it's been a literal lifesaver. He's doing it on Stage It, where it's pay what you want model for his shows, minimum payment of 10 cents, I think. But he's doing 4 days a week, so it's might as well be a tour, right? Except he gets to do it from his office. And he says it's saved his life. He's been able to keep on making money, and fans keep on coming back. And it's been a really powerful thing for him. And Stage It has been around for 11 years,
forever,
right? And they were too early, probably. Or should have picked it up.
Or this is the accelerant, right? I mean, it's like Kurzweil always talks about how products adopt when technological innovation meets with customer demand. And so they had the technology, customer demand was like, well, no, I'd rather go see a show. Well, now customers, so you get the product market fit.
Yeah. So I watched Rhett's show on Friday night, I think. And one of the big points they brought up about Stage It is it's not recorded. It's not rebroadcast. It's like a live show. You're either there, and then it's gone. So that does, in a world where everything ends up getting recorded and then redistributed a million different ways, that does feel special. It feels like you were part of something with a small group of people. And Rhett does a great job. I've never actually seen him perform or really talk much. I've just listened to his music, and so he's a very kind of vulnerable but joyful artist, and that's cool to see. Then the other person was okay.
Sorry. No, go ahead.
The other panelist was Sav Beist of The Accidentals. She wrote a 30-page how-to guide on using OBS, the open source broadcasting software that I tried once when we did a Procura webinar and failed at using because it is so difficult to use. There was a huge learning curve. I wish that guide was around in February or whenever we did that. But I don't know. It was a really great panel. Berkeley and the Recording Academy did a great job of picking up panels.
Will we be able to watch it? Is it?
It's on.
I know it's on Facebook, and I'm not on Facebook. But is there any other way other than Facebook?
Not at the moment. But what I'm thinking of doing is, I've got notes. I'm going to write an article, kind of recapping it. I'll try to embed the video in that article, and we either publish on Entrepreneurship or on the Recording Academy site.
Awesome. Just a couple of quick things on that. So the another theme that keeps coming out of these pieces is that sort of artificial scarcity type thing. We're limiting because the internet is antithetical to that. The internet there's no scarcity. Zoe talks about wanting to go to some of these small independent venues where they she would play at her house or whatever, but the independent venues would sell tickets and then geofence it so that you would have to be in a certain range of the independent theaters so they could charge for it. I think that's super interesting. She's also saying, can I do concerts with a higher ticket price but for a much smaller group of people? Because she can go in and sell out a 2,000 venue or whatever, 2,000 person. We're not going to have 2,000 people sitting side by side.
Which is kind of what Joe Pug does, right?
Exactly. Can she have a higher price thing for 20 or 30 people? The thing that crushed me was what she said about, it's, yes, the revenue is important to me as a performer, but live performer. But she said, for me, playing live is my version of going to church. And I was like, yes. I said, because for me, teaching in the classroom is my version of going to church. Those are sacred moments, and feeding off of people and having that back and forth and reading the room. That's what we're not getting with the online thing. That veneer, that wall between us is really, really different.
Well, and that's interesting. That's an important point that was brought up on this panel, because even though the goal of the panel was really to help artists understand how to use these platforms to make money from them, but both Matt Heafy and Rhett Miller said, listen, the monetization is important and it's meant a lot for us, but it's also so much about spreading joy when it's so hard to, and it's an imperfect solution. But Rhett actually pushed back a little bit when I said, I think all artists should be trying to make money from their performances. And he's like, well, but also you just got to do what you got to do. And if this is what makes you feel good performing for people, don't put up barriers. Some artists just need that. They need that type of that outlet. And Matt Heafy talked about it. All of his stuff is available for free and you get certain perks if you pay, but he really cares about, people can't go to shows. People can't do all this stuff. Being able to show up for his fans still means a lot to him. So.
Yeah. And it means a lot to the performer too. I mean, a lot of the stuff that came out of Zoe conversation was the reciprocal relationship between performer and artist, and creating a space where it goes back to the whole mirror thing, where the artist kind of is getting something from the audience and vice versa. There's a reciprocity there that I think is trickier to do online.
Yeah,
that's great though. That panel sounds awesome.
Yeah, I will. I'll write a summary and you might be able to watch it without being logged into Facebook. We'll see. But it is.
I just don't want to even give them. I don't even want to go to facebook.com/whatever. I mean, don't get me started on Facebook. But
Yeah.
Anyway, Tres Costas.
Let's do it. Ladies first.
Dan.
So, yeah.
The joke that never gets old.
I'm going to just take that as my cue. last week I mentioned that I bumped off one of my top 3 things after seeing the cover of the New York Times. The one that was bumped off, and I was kind of like, listening back to the last episode, I was kind of surprised that I had, maybe I went before you last week, Dan, or you went first last week, and you talking about cheese and pickle sandwiches. One of my things last week was this Bon Appetit video where like professional chefs make grilled cheese sandwiches. And they've been doing a series of that kind of thing. So like professional chefs in their own kitchen during this time will all make something similar or the same thing. And the videos themselves, they're kind of long. They're like half an hour, but they are funny and sweet. And it's just kind of like that look into what someone else's life looks like right now. But I also just love grilled cheese. I think it's one of the best comfort foods. But then they did it in an interesting way. It was all like, they all had their own whatever they do when they make grilled cheese. So like one woman put kimchi in it, which I think sounds delicious. Another woman put dates, which I think sounds disgusting. Like dates. Or there was like an aloo gobi grilled cheese, which is super interesting. My personal favorite was he called it a fishy grilled cheese, and it was with sardines and pickled peppers. But the videos are just like so pleasant to watch. And so again, there's a whole series of them, but the grilled cheese one, I think grilled cheese is also just like the perfect food for right now. And everyone is cooking because you have to, but you don't always have to make something like crazy and elaborate. Sometimes you just want cheese and bread.
Well, it's a comfort food, right? And I'm sure there's nostalgia there. The same reason I was going back to my cheese and pickle, nostalgia and comfort. Yeah.
Totally. And that's why I like that everyone puts their like own spin on it. It's obviously something that gives them just additional comfort on top of it already being the world's most comfortable food.
Add some Branson pickle and get ready to lose your shit.
Will keep my eye out for Branson pickles.
I pickled a duck.
Yes, I don't know if I would recommend pickling a duck, but and then the second thing, we've talked about Negronis on this podcast before, and I love Negronis, and I actually had a Negroni last night, but this last week, and now it's really cold, but at the beginning of the week, it was like 30 degrees or 100 degrees, I think. I'll let one of you confirm that.
32 is 100. So
okay,
it's close to 100.
Close to 100 degrees here. And I started drinking Campari and soda, not for the first time, but I love Campari so much. And Negroni also, it's a cocktail. It's a lot of booze. Campari, even just like a splash of Campari and soda is so refreshing, so delicious. It's such a summer drink. And so again, it's been cold, so I've reverted back to the Negroni, but a Campari and soda is so underrated. Orange, if you have it, I had it at the beginning of the week, I didn't at the end. But Campari is just so good. And then my third thing, I started listening to a new podcast. There's only 3 episodes. And so it's maybe a slightly premature thing to mention, but I don't think so. I'm hooked already. It's called Wind of Change. Have either of you heard of it?
No.
So the host of the podcast, I think he did that, or he was involved in that Richard Simmons one. I don't know if you guys listened to that, like Missing Richard Simmons.
We're searching for Richard.
Yeah, or whatever it was called. But so this journalist, the Wind of Change is a Scorpion song, German band. And
is this the CIA thing?
Yeah, and this journalist podcast host, he spent some time, I can't remember why, but in the first episode he mentions that he had top secret clearance for a time.
I've heard about this.
And he was like at the CIA, and the only thing that he wondered after leaving there is what's beyond top secret, because there's like 1 million Americans that have top secret level clearance. And someone else that he knows at the CIA told him, if you want to like occupy your writing and just mind, look into Wind of Change. And there's this like story, theory, rumor, or whatever you want to call it, that the CIA actually wrote that song, and it was a tactic to expand the US's power in the Soviet Union during the Cold War as this like, and it's also become this like anthem of peace. Like, you know, it was like sung at the fall of the Berlin Wall. And so there's all of these kind of reasons for it. And he also prefaces it, and I think it's mentioned a couple of times, but he says, like, for anyone that right away feels this is a ridiculous notion, like the movie Argo, Ben Affleck's movie.
Yeah.
That was based on a true story where the CIA sent a Hollywood production to Iran to get people out. Like, it's actually not that crazy. And it's interesting because, like, there are people who worked at the CIA previously who speak to him, but they're all like talking about really declassified stuff, and some people don't want to talk about it at all because then it's a felony. But so anyways, I don't know if he'll actually have an answer, because that's one of the things, and I think that was also the case. The Richard Simmons one was actually a little bit problematic, but at the end of it there was like, and he's gone and no one knows why. And this podcast may end like, and no one knows if it's true or not. But I find the whole notion of it super interesting. And so even though I've only listened to 3 episodes, I still feel like it's worth a spot on my top 3, because I listened to all 3 this last week. When I heard about it, it was recommended to me via another podcast that I love. I can't remember which one. And just the like little 5-second trailer, I was like, ooh. And so anyways, I recommend that you guys also maybe check it out, because that whole idea of like, but it also goes to show the whole idea that art can really be the change maker. And so something like getting a random German rock band to help spread, anyways, the whole
There's nothing
kind of
random about
setup.
the Scorpions. There's nothing random about that.
Come on. The Scorpions. Don't besmirch the Scorpions.
Oh, okay. Are you Scorpion fans then? Is that how I can take this response?
I just love all hair metal.
Okay, yeah.
All hair metal.
Pretty much.
Like, Warrant?
Yeah.
Dio?
I'll go and Dio. Yeah, Dio. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, Def Leppard.
Okay,
I was like raised on Def Leppard, and so that opened up that whole world to me.
Well, Def Leppard,
I love a cheesy guitar solo. Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah.
But I can't talk about it because it's an active case going on. But I am an expert witness on a copyright infringement case right now involving hair metal. That is all I will say.
So you are working with
the CIA. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I am. Yeah, no, I've heard about that CIA thing with the Scorpions for some time, and it's yet another one of those things that just 100% convinces me that we're all living in the sim of some diabolical jokester. Like, let's see what we can make these human people do now. I know what we'll do. We'll have the CIA write a song for the Scorpions. Like, that's not come on. You know?
Yeah. I mean, there are interesting things about the band that, I mean, I don't know anything about Scorpions, to be honest, until I mean, sure, I know like a few of their songs, but didn't know anything about them. But it's also interesting that they're a German band, but all of their songs are in English. And then they were like really big. They don't sing in German, which is that's an interesting thing. And then they're like huge in Japan and other Asian countries apparently. So you have this German band singing about peace in Japan in English to other non-native English speaking people.
George is having a breakdown.
The singer,
you can't make this shit up.
But for real, the singer of it, they play like a couple interview clips, and it also just very German. The interview clips are just like funny, not intentionally, but he tells the story also about how he was like, they were on tour and they were at this hotel, and I don't know, someone at the hotel was like, oh, there's someone that wants to speak to you from the CIA. And it was this woman, and she was like humming that, or asked him to hum the Wind of Change song. Like, so there's all these weird like anecdotes too, where you're just like, but it is one of those things where you do wonder, like, is this real? Like, could you write this? Or is it so bizarre that it is just real life? But the whole, yeah, anyway, so I'm loving it so far. I suggest you guys subscribe. And that is my third thing.
Absolutely. You're saying this as if I didn't really produce that podcast. Like, this has got me written all over it.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Dan?
I'm looking at George's reactions and thinking he might have been a co-conspirator in that whole thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
You never know.
Now living quietly in Massachusetts.
Yeah. Exactly, off the grid.
My 3 things. I've got some good things this week. The first,
as opposed to
sometimes it's hard to come up with three things, especially a week like this, or was a short week and
yeah.
everyone was working long hours. But the Night Game, which is one of my favorite bands. They first released music only 2 years ago, but the lead guy, Martin Johnson, has been around for forever. He was in this kind of poppy emo band called Boys Like Girls, like 15 years ago, and then he went on to
Girls
produce
Against Boys.
Boys Like Girls.
I don't know.
But then he went on to produce stuff for Taylor Swift and do all this big stuff. And then he thought about quitting music, and then he decided to come up with this new project, which was just the music that he wanted to make. And that's called The Night Game. And so they put out an album a year ago, and I'll never forget when I saw them on tour, because at the end of the show, he just sprinted off stage, and I thought, man, maybe he's got to pee or something, but it was like they wrapped up the song and he sprinted. But it turns out what he was doing, he was sprinting to get to the merch booth so he could be there to greet all the fans. And this is not some up and coming dude. This guy's been around for forever, tons of money, but he cares that much. And that's a really, really powerful thing to see. So he just put out the new single, kind of starting the new release cycle for his new album. And he posted on Instagram an IGTV video post. It's the instrumental, and he's reading like this essay that he wrote over top of it, and it's talking about the magic of music. And he talks about being a kid in New Hampshire and looking in the window of a guitar store, dreaming about playing guitar and learning how to play, and how it felt like magic. And as he got deeper and deeper into it, it lost the magic, and he knew too many of the strings that were being pulled. And this new album that he's working on after being dropped by his label, he was on Interscope, is how he's finding the magic again, and that's what's keeping him going. So it's a really powerful, short 4-minute video. But it's
I can't wait to see that.
I always like it when artists are kind of vulnerable like that.
And the merch thing, like, you know, my favorite band of late, that Krangden, or however you say it, like the reason they wear their wigs is because originally when they would play, they wanted to be selling merch, but they wanted to appear different or bigger, whatever, like have actual merch people. So they put wigs on. They get off stage, put wigs on, and then, or take the wigs off and then go to the merch table, whatever, like a disguise. And then now it's just like, oh, they just wear the wigs. But
this became a thing.
Yeah.
The second thing I have, which I should have brought up sooner because I don't know how long this is going to last. Apple is doing free 90-day trials of Final Cut Pro and Logic Pro. I've been a Logic Pro user for years now instead of Pro Tools or anything like that. But I'm excited to get into Final Cut because I've been using Adobe Premiere, and sometimes a different tool provides some different inspiration. But for anyone that's looking to create things at a level that is above GarageBand and iMovie, obviously you have to be a Mac user, but those are great tools. And in fact, they're available for 3 months. That's a pretty great trial. I don't think Apple's done that before.
No, I think that's so true about like change. Like if you're struggling with creativity, change your medium, change your device. Like as a guitar player, like I revert to the same pattern. So like when I'm really stuck, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna pick up my banjo, or I'm gonna pick up my mandolin or something, because I'm not as proficient on those, and it makes me rethink the instrument, and I write differently, I write chords and stuff. So changing the medium of expression is often a really good creative catalyst.
Or on guitar, change your tuning, do some type of open
I do it all the
tuning
time.
and figure it out.
I was figuring out Tom Courtney from the what you call it, Viola Tango, but someone did a cover of it, and she tuned it to, I think, open D, which is not, you know, it's got the F sharp, which is not, like, I do a lot of kind of open G and open D stuff, or open G, but open D with that F sharp in the open tuning is interesting. It forces you to totally change your fingering.
The last thing I have is this T-shirt, which arrived this week. I'm surprised it showed up before you guys got yours, but I think it's pretty dope.
E&A, it's really dope, man. And you did the graphic design on that?
It's just the logo that we've been using on the website. Yeah.
I know, but you got it like the size and everything, and now it's got double meanings: entrepreneurship and art, and encouragement and accountability.
Accountability.
Yeah.
I'm
My mom's
excited.
like, what's that podcast you do? A&E, Arts and
There we
Entertainment.
go.
I was
Yes,
like,
yes, yes,
no,
yes. It is.
clearly you haven't listened to an episode, Mom.
It is neither artistic nor entertaining. Uh, well, it's a great T-shirt.
Yeah,
I'm very excited to get mine.
Yeah.
should be soon.
We
They've shipped, but
we should give some to listeners too.
Yeah, we should find a fun way to do it.
Yeah, and speaking of, I got another shipment of my book. My blockchain book just came in, so I've got a bunch of them kicking around here. I'd love to find some way just to give them away to.
Well, we should tie it with people that submit something they've created.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, because I see the orders that come through, people buying my book, but I didn't write the book to make money. Like it's but so I'd rather, I just want to get it out there. Okay, is it my turn?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So my three things. So the first one is just a quick Pete Buck quote. I love guitar player for REM, and just kind of my surrogate older brother. I've learned a lot about life and how to live it. Through not only his guitar playing, but I just find him very eloquent and his writing and thinking, and we just have similar tastes. But this jumped out at me. He says, I think you make a big mistake to say, well, gee, people are really stupid. I have to pander to them, because people aren't that stupid. I mean, a lot of people are, but you're not going to reach them anyway. I'm not going to write a song for an 8-year-old, right? And like REM is such an example of not dumbing shit down, right? Just like, we're going to make our thing, and it ain't going to be for everybody, but we're not. And I keep having these conversations and these threads with people of like, make the shit that you feel, that don't try to write for some audience, right? Perceived or real. Write from your soul and don't dumb it down. He's, and that was back in 1989, long before they were, big, huge. The second, so you're not dumbing things down. So I, like all of us, just wrestle so much with these times and what goes on the mind stream. And the other night, I just couldn't take any more of the coverage of America just falling apart. So I turned, as I always do, to art, and so I went to YouTube. And I was like, I'm gonna watch a Hunter S. Thompson documentary, just because I've seen it a million times. I love him so much, and I just there's certain people who I really miss in these times. Like I really wish like Hunter was alive to talk about these times. I wish Bill Hicks was alive to talk about these times. I wish Jesus Christ was alive to talk about these, but so I was just going to watch the documentary, but I pressed, I screwed it up. I pressed the wrong button. And next thing I know, I'm watching a documentary on the band Slint, which I'm sure you all don't know, but they were a Louisville, Kentucky band in the late 80s, early 90s. And to this day, they're kind of most important. Well, the record that if you know it, the work that anybody knows, is called Spiderland, and it's really dissonant, and it's really, to my ears, it's very, very beautiful, and it's one of those records that's timeless. But the documentary is amazing, and it's called Breadcrumb Trail, which is the first song on Spiderland. And I'd encourage anyone to go back and watch it. You don't need to know or even care about the band. It's wildly entertaining, and it's a story. In the South, it's such a complicated place, and watching all of it, but like there's a certain slowness and eccentricity there. So like, for instance, the band, they interview one of the main guy's parents, and there's this kind of, Southern kind of people of a certain age. They look like they literally just walked out of the Presbyterian church, and they wanted to be supportive, and they'd be like, well, yeah, they'd sit down there and play for hours and hours, like 8 hours in the basement, and it's just like 8 hours of Slint is a little rough, but they were so encouraging, and so the band members like, yeah, well, our parents got us our first gig at the church. It was like, just like as part of the church service, up comes Slint, and then they say like, we were playing, and old women were covering their ears and babies were crying. And if you like imagine just like a normal, like just Episcopalian church service, like, and now some members of our congregation are going to perform a song, and it's Slint, you know, and like and then they play shows like one of my favorite singer-songwriters, this guy named Will Oldham, who's also from Louisville, and he's actually in a movie, a great John Sayles movie called Mate One. Will Oldham's in it, but he recorded under the band Palace and Palace Brothers, or whatever it is. And they wanted him to be in the band, and he's like, well, I'm not gonna be. I don't want to be in the band. He's like, well, what do you want to do? And his whole job for like the first kind of bunch of gigs at the tour was Will Oldham just sitting in front of the kick drum to make sure that it didn't get backed. It's like, and like Will Oldham's sort of like a legendary, so this idea that like a teenage Will Oldham was sitting there holding the kick drum, but and then you know, Slint was the backing band for that first Palace Brothers record. And if you want to hear like true kind of like outsider art music, or listen to that first Palace record, because it's just so southern and so beautiful, and it just it made me think of, and you know, and Hunter S. Thompson had the whole Kentucky thing, and his great piece about the Kentucky Derby is a depraved, you know, whatever, and then that tied together with REM, which again, a southern band but just full of eccentricities, and made me think of James Lee Burke and Faulkner and all this stuff, and so this weird America that we live in, and the increasing just disharmony, there is this sort of beauty and eccentricism that kind of comes out of art, and just shows all the rough edges and all of the dissonance and all of it kind of coming together. And sometimes it comes together in this like unexpected and beautiful and durable way, and other times it just falls apart. Oh, and my third thing, this friend Joey, and I met Joey like years and years ago when I was pretty much living at the Gramercy Park Hotel, because I was running a company in New York, and I'd go, and I was like morbidly obese at the time, and I was trying to eat better, and so there was this great restaurant called Pure Food and Wine right on Irving Place in Gramercy Park area. And like I just sort of stumbled into it by accident once, and I was, you know, by myself as I always was, and I was just sitting at the bar, and like I didn't know anything about it, this place, and I'm eating the food, and I was like, wow, that's really delicious. And I asked the bartender, I was like, yeah, well, is this like all? I wasn't pescatarian at the time. Like, is this all vegetarian? He's like, dude, it's all raw vegan. I didn't even know what that was. But so I got deep down, you know, kind of the rabbit hole of that. But most importantly, and relevant to the story, I would go to Pure Food and Wine and just sit at the bar and eat by myself after these like arduous days of this torturous company and living in a hotel. And Joey became kind of, I mean, bartender friend, whatever, but he's just like he's a sweet, like, just a good example of like what humans should be. And so he Pure Food and Wine is a whole another story. But anyway, he launched a hot sauce thing, and his own hot sauce brand. And he hit me up on Instagram, whatever, and he's like, look, I'm doing a special three bottles for X number. And I was like, hell yeah. And he sent them to me, and they're all homemade, and no sugar, no preservatives, no, you know, it definitely his values come through, and they're amazing. And I love me some hot sauce, but they just really, really good. So just a shout out to Joey's hot sauce, which you can find online or whatever, put links in, but really, really good, organic, sugar-free, no additives, just fresh kind of good hot sauce.
Is it called Joey's hot sauce, or did you say that? Okay.
Joey's hot sauce. Yeah, he's got a couple different varieties of it, and he makes it himself, and it's really, really good.
Cool. I love hot sauce.
I'm gonna check that out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Are we all big hot sauce fans on here?
Mm-hmm.
That's cool. That's exciting to know.
Oh my gosh, my favorite. Yeah. Love it.
Yeah, I love hot sauce. I get excited thinking about it.
Literally, whenever I think about hot sauce, I just start salivating.
Yeah, I know. I just got excited for real.
Yeah.
What's your favorite, Dan?
It's not exciting, but I can't make chicken without it. Just Texas Pete's, and I just
Texas Pete's
dump
good.
it on.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Texas Pete's solid choice.
even if I'm making like a chicken salad or something, Texas Pete's.
Yeah, solid choice. Solid choice. Carly?
You know mine, and I think it might be, maybe it's not though, Tabasco. Also, like classic. It's just, it's the best. The classic Tabasco. I'm actually not crazy about the habanero Tabasco, but the classic Tabasco is just, I don't think anything beats it. My only problem with it is that I don't know why the easiest size to find is like the eyedropper. Like they always have the smallest bottles. I want the big. I go through I go through so much hot sauce, and so Tabasco, especially in Germany, like if you can find it, they only ever have the like little itty bitty one. But yeah, classic Tabasco I think is my number one. What about you, George?
Well, I travel with Tabasco, and I'm right there with you. I think Tabasco as a rule is I have a little travel size Tabasco. I would say and it's different for different foods, right? But I mean, Tabasco is pretty much universally good on most everything. I don't find Tabasco great on just like straight ass Mexican. Like I don't find myself dumping Tabasco on tacos. So my go-to for Mexican is El Yucateco, the green El Yucateco. Holy hell! But I will say that Joey's stuff is really good on Mexican too, and I dumped it on some lentils the other night. It's really great. But yeah, Tabasco is just a whole. It's almost like it's almost not hot sauce to me. It's like I have 3 condiments that are on my counter: salt, pepper, and Tabasco at all times. Like I view Tabasco as just sort of like a condiment more than like a hot sauce. But.
Yeah.
Have you guys watched Hot Ones?
No.
Oh my god! Well, you need to.
We have to restart
in this podcast right now and go watch Hot Ones.
All right. You haven't heard of Hot Ones?
No.
Okay. All right.
Did the CIA do it?
they must have done hundreds of episodes. So it's produced by. It's produced by Complex. It's a celebrity interview show, but the whole point is they go through a series of increasingly hot wings throughout the interview, and they showcase different hot sauces, and the show now has their own signature hot sauce. The interviewer is great. If you look it up, they've done multiple hundreds of episodes at this point. It's so well done. It's hilarious, and they're just eating hot wings or. Sometimes they'll do like cauliflower, fried cauliflower, or just like tofu, depending on the guest. But the hot sauce element of just a lot of the celebrity guests are not people that would eat hot sauce, but they always have to get right to the end, and they're crying and they're freaking out and they're screaming.
Wait, is that where that Paul Rudd thing came from?
Yes,
like that meme where he's like, "Here we are." And he's just like, yeah, okay, I thought.
But they're all like that.
Yeah.
Oh,
okay, so that's,
so good.
I have to say, maybe it was last weekend, because I don't eat meat anymore. But I think about what I would cheat with if I were to cheat, and I actually really miss chicken wings. And Frank's Red Hot sauce also is like, I think, a really classic hot sauce. And the other week I made the cauliflower, what are they?
It's like buffalo cauliflower.
Yeah, like the cauliflower Frank's Red Hot.
So good.
But like the fake chicken wings, and it obviously is nothing like a chicken wing, but it satisfied that so much, and it's just because it's something soaked in Frank's. Like it doesn't actually matter
and
what the vessel
like
was.
bite size. Yeah,
totally.
Yeah, it's true.
Anyway, a shout out to Frank's as well.
Yeah, I made Henry wanted kind of buffalo wings, as he calls them, and he's vegetarian. So, and this was his ingenious idea. He's like, why don't you get the like Gardein wings or whatever, cook them a little bit, then scrape the breading off, and then just put them in a pan and just dump Frank's into it, and they were unreal good, but it is, as you're saying, Carly, it's that vinegar spicy thing. You can put it on like shoe leather and it tastes pretty good.
Thank God it's lunchtime.
Shoe leather. Yeah. All right. Glad we got through this one together, guys.
Yeah.
Me too.
Thank you,
Take
guys.
care.